Well, the Titanic is in the news again for an odd reason. It says a new Titanic expedition is planned, but the United States government is opposing it. Here's why. The U.S. government is opposing a scheduled mission aimed at retrieving historically significant items from the Titanic. This is an expedition that's planned in 2024. And apparently, based off of some of the recent events, they're now saying, no, it's not going to happen. The United States government is blocking it. I've got a lot of opinions on this, but we're first going to take a look at this article. The U.S. government is decisively intervening to prevent the planned expedition to recover artifacts from the Titanic wreck next year, referring to a federal law and international pact that recognize the shipwreck as a revered burial site. The expedition is being organized by the RMS Titanic Incorporated, a company based in Georgia that holds the salvage rights to the most well-known shipwreck in the world. This company showcases artifacts that have been retrieved from the location resting in the depths of the North Atlantic, encompassing items ranging from silverware to segments from the Titanic's hull. According to the New York Times, the federal government is taking legal action to assert control over who can recover artifacts from the storied liner and potentially to block an expedition planned for next year. The move comes as the Titan submersible disaster of June 18 raised questions about who controls access to the ship's remains, which lie more than 2 miles down on the North Atlantic seabed. The legal action is also notable because it pits the legislative and executive branches of government against the judicial branch. This has been a long time coming. That is according to a retired lawyer who specializes in shipwreck conservation. The federal government has been forced to intervene as a party to ask the court to enforce these laws. So what is really going on here? Why have there been missions down to the Titanic and they've been able to successfully retrieve things, but now all of a sudden after the Titan submersible disaster, it's a big problem? I think a lot of Titanic fans view this as ridiculous. The Titanic is going to collapse up onto itself probably in about 15 to 16 years. Some people think it's going to happen in 2030. Others say 2035, maybe 2040. Either way, the clock is ticking, and this is a huge mission because apparently with this mission that they have planned in 2024, they want to go inside of it. Now, recently, back in April, we saw the released 3D scan of both the stern and the bow of the Titanic. I think anytime you're going down to the Titanic, obviously we had the Titan mess. That's a complete joke. You should not have tourists go down to those depths in a submersible. That's ridiculous. Anytime you go down to the Titanic, it needs to be for exploration of the ship, documentation, and then possibly bringing things to the surface. Personally, in my opinion, I am much more interested in trying to get smaller robots into the interior of the bow, which is still technically intact, and there are rooms towards the front of the ship that I do believe we can possibly explore if we get a small enough robot into those rooms. Now, why would the U.S. government suddenly enforce this so-called law that the Titanic is a protected gravesite? I'm not really sure. Maybe the U.S. government is pissed off that their technology got exposed. They had some very secretive sonar technology, and that was disrupted, and it was exposed when the Titan submersible imploded. They basically knew it imploded Sunday night. We didn't officially hear about it until, I want to say, Thursday, and they knew it imploded because of the technology that they had. They could hear it in the ocean. But either way, whatever happens with this, I do think if you are trying to recover this, if you do have the rights, if you are the RMS Titanic Incorporated, who you've had the rights since 1994, U.S. Attorney's Office files legal motion to block a Titanic expedition planned for 2024. The Titanic Incorporated had said they wanted to recover the ship's radio. See, now this is just, I don't know. I mean, I guess the radio would be cool to have. Let's get into the ship, guys. Do we, I also think the whole thing, recovering plates and things like that, I mean, that's fine. You can look at it once. It's whatever. I'm more interested in documentation on the interior of the ship. You know, go back to the Turkish baths. I don't think they've been there since the Cameron expedition in 2001 or 2002. Those things were preserved great. Why not you send a little robot into one of those rooms and see? Maybe you can get into the pool, maybe you can get into other rooms. But apparently this mission was based on them retrieving the Titanic's radio, and it was granted in May of 2020 by a U.S. district judge. In a filing, the court stated that they found that the company's plan seeks to minimize disturbance to the rest of the Titanic wreck, including the hull of the ship and the remains as well. The U.S. government, however, filed a legal challenge to stop that planned mission, which ultimately never happened. And then there's a related article. The Titanic disaster led to a rethink of international regulations. Titan may have a similar legacy. So it does seem like Titan is a culprit in terms of these expeditions not happening. Now, if you go back to June, when Titan imploded, I think a lot of us said, okay, they're probably not going to be doing any type of expeditions down to the Titanic for at least a few more years. But this was already planned, and this was given the go-ahead back in May of 2020, and now the U.S. government is coming out and saying, we just saw what happened with Titan, and maybe we should hold it a little bit, although this is a distinct, different situation than Titan. Titan was more of a tourist sham little event where they'd go down. This is all about recovering stuff, but I guess, you know, I'm guessing this is a situation that'll eventually get solved and they'll be allowed to go down there. I don't know if it'll happen in 2024 or later, but I would like to get the interior of the Titanic documented at least one more time. I mean, when you think about it, we really haven't seen a lot of those rooms for, at this point, going on over 20 years. So you would think, you know, it is the year 2023. If the thing does collapse by 2037 or 2038, you know, every year that goes by, it's getting more and more rusticles and it's becoming more and more unrecognizable. So let's do it as quick as possible. We'll do a massive mission. We will send multiple smaller robots. We will completely map out the entire ship, and then from then on, we'll just go once a year and see how it's doing and do like a 1-year check-in on the Titanic. That's what I would say they should do when it comes to expeditions down to the Titanic. But it seems like the U.S. government, possibly because of the Titan situation, honestly, it's probably because of that, because, I mean, they were letting Titan go down there 5 times a year. Maybe even more than that. So I think because of that, they're saying we're going to stop this for now. You know, is it because, oh, it's a grave site? I mean, they were letting them do it anyways before, and it was deemed a grave site that you couldn't, you know, take stuff from, but they had permission. The RMS Titanic Incorporated had permission to retrieve certain things and preserve the ship the best that they could. So we'll see how this ends up developing. And yeah, that's interesting. I'm very eager to see that. If they go down there in 2024, that'll be good. They'll get some nice, they've got brand new, even more Ultra HD cameras, you know, great technology they're going to be bringing down there, I'm sure. And maybe there's a rumor that they might take the robots inside the ship. You cannot take a submersible in the ship. It will damage the ship. You know, it's just going to risk it too much. The submersible's too big. You've got to take the robots on the cables into it through the grand staircase, just like they did in the movie. And that's what I would expect if this actually does happen in 2024. Maybe the U.S. government actually does block it. Although you would have to say, you know, if the RMS Titanic Incorporated had good lawyers, they could argue that while, yes, this is deemed a grave site, there's a special exemption to the Titanic because it's the most famous ship in history, and there's a time crunch to where we don't know if these things are literally going to disintegrate in the coming years because they're so old. There's a time crunch on it. We have to go now, and this cannot be treated the same as other grave sites in the ocean because it is so historic. It needs a special exemption. That's all their lawyer has to argue, and I'm sure that, you know, if that happens, they'll be able to go down there in 2024, but we will see. Either way, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on X. Link to that's always in the description.